Hello there. In this video we're going to look at percentages, and most of the work and techniques we're going to need for the foundation paper and the higher paper. But enough of my prattle. Yes, prattle. Right, basics. Now, before we go any further, we need to be able to convert percentages to decimals. And the way you do that is you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So 35% is 0.35. And you can't begin a number with a decimal point, so you have to put a 0 in front. What about converting percentages to decimals? Sometimes we need to be able to do that. Well, a percentage is just a fraction over 100. So we write 27 over 100. We also need to be able to work the other way around. That is, convert decimals, here we go, 0.43, to percentages. Well, in this instance, we move the decimal point 2 places in the opposite direction to the right, to make it 43%. Now, what about 11/20ths? Slightly more complex. All fractions have to be over 100 to be able to convert them to percentages. So I convert that to a fraction over 100. And from your work on equivalent fractions, we know that to turn 20 into 100, we multiply it by 5. And what we do to the numerator, beg pardon, the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. So we multiply 11 by 5 to make it 55 over 100, which is 55%. Okay, now let's look at how we solve some percentage problems. Increase £400 by 35%. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find 10% of £400. Now to find 10% you divide by 10, and if there's a few zeros at the end, that's easy, just knock off a 0. So that's £40. So that's what 10% is. So what's 30%? I use ditto marks. Well, that's 3 lots of 40, which is £120. We've still got a 5 here, haven't we? So we've got to find what 5% is. So 5% of 40. Well, if 10% of 400, my mistake, is 40, 5% of 400 is half of that, 20. So what's 35%? Of 400. Well, it's going to be the 5%, that's the £20, added to the 30%, which is 120, which is £140. Now, the question said increase £400. So there's our 400, and we add 35% of 400, which is £140, to give us £540. Now, what about a decrease? Decrease 64 kilograms by 40%. So we start off as before, 10% of 64 kilograms. Now this hasn't got any zeros, so we've got to move the decimal point 1 place to the left. So it's 6.4 kilograms. So what's 40% of 64 kilograms? Well, it's going to be 4 times 6.4 kilograms. Now, 2 times 6.4 kilograms is 12.8. So 4 times 6.4 is going to be double that, which is 25.6 kilograms. Now, you could have used long multiplication, but it said decrease. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract this 25.6 kilograms from 64, and gives us a chance to revise some of our decimal work. 64, take away 25.6. Put the decimal point that's hidden at the end of 64 and put it in the answer row. Now we haven't got anything above the 6, so we're going to put a 0 there. It's the only figure we can add whenever we will. Now, 0 take away 6 you can't do with this method, so we borrow. 10 take away 6 is 4. What's 3 take away 5? You can't do it with this method, so we have to borrow. 13 take away 5 is 8. 5 take away 2 is 3, and there's our answer. 38.4 kilograms. Right, now there's a second method. Involves using decimals. Increase £400 by 35%. So you start by thinking, look, my original amount is 100%, to which I add 35%. which is 135%. Now, 135% equals 1.35. Remember, I work on turning the percentages to decimals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 1.35 times the £400. So right, 0 times 5 is 0, 0 times 3 is 0, 0 times 1 is 0. Now I'm going to multiply by this 0, it's in the tens column. This is actually, when you're multiplying by 0, you don't bother. So really it all hinges on this. What's 400 times 135? The 4 is in the hundreds column, so I add 2 zeros. 4 times 5 is 20. Put another 0 there, carry the 2. 4 times 3 is 12, add 2, 14. 4 times 1 is 4, add 1, 5. So my answer is 5, 4, 0, 0, 0. But my question was 1.35 times 400, and I had 2 figures after decimal point. So my answer needs 2 figures after decimal point. So there's my answer, 540.00 or 540, and the units were pounds. Let's try that again. Decrease 64 by 40%. Works best with decrease. So we think 100%, we're decreasing it by 40%, so we take away 40% to give 60%. 60% as a decimal equals 0.60, or better still and simpler, 0.6. So I'm going to multiply 64 kilograms, remember with multiplication the order doesn't matter, times 0.6. So I do the integer, the whole number, multiplication. 6 times 4 is 24, put 4 there, carry the 2. 6 times 6 is 36, add the carry 2, 38. Put 8 there, and 3 there. So my answer is 384 for 64 times 6. But I'm trying to work out 64 times 0.6. So my question had 1 figure after decimal point, so my answer needs 1 figure after decimal point. So there's the answer, 38.4. Now if you're good at multiplying with decimals and converting percentages to and from decimals, this is probably the best method. Right, adding VAT. Now VAT, thanks to the government we've got, is now 20%. Let's look at this problem. VAT is added on should be to the price of a set of pots and pans. The set of pots and pans costs £8 before VAT. What's the price after VAT is added? Well, I'm going to use the decimal method. So our original amount is 100%. Here goes our lovely government, which is, when I say government, that's just people bossing themselves, bossing you around. It was 120%. 120% equals, as a decimal, 1.20, or better still, 1.2. So, to find the amount after the 20% is added, I'm going to multiply £80 by the decimal 1.2. So let's do the whole number multiplication. 80 times 12. 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 8 is 16, put 6 there, would carry the 1, but it goes in because there's nothing else to be added there. Now I'm going to multiply with the 1, but the 1's in the tens column, so I start with 0. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 8 is 8. Add up the figures, 6 add 0 is 6, 1 add 8 is 9. So 80 times 12 is 960. The question I was trying to answer was, what's 80 times 1.2? This had 1 figure after decimal point, so my answer needs 1 after the decimal point. So it's 96.0, or when it's 0.00 or 0 or 000, we just ignore them, so it's £96. Right, another percentage problem. Profit and loss. I purchased a car for £800 and sold it for £560. What is my percentage loss? First we work out the loss. The loss is the difference between what I bought it at, what I bought it for, and how much I sold it for. If I'd sold it for more, it would be a profit. I've sold it for less. And that's £240. So there's my loss. What's my fractional loss? It's £240, and it's always over the original amount, which is 800. Now, what about my percentage loss? Well, I've got to convert that fraction to over 100. Now, how do I do that? Well, I divide that by 8. So if I do the same to the numerator, that's the top number, the fraction will be equivalent. So 240 over 800 is the same as 30 over 100, which is 30%. Repeated percentage change. Here we go. The cost of a house decreases by 4% each year. The house was worth £120. £120 if you could buy a house for £120. £120,000 in 2010. What's it worth in 2012? Right. So it decreases. So I start with my 100% and I take away the 4%, which is 96%. So after a year, it's 96% of its original value. What's 96% as a decimal? It's 0.96. So I'm going to multiply 120,000. Well, I'm going to forget the thousand. I'm just going to call it thou times 0.96. So let's do our multiplication. So I'll do the integer multiplication. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 2 is 12. Put 2 there, carry the 1. 6 times 1 is 6. Add 1, 7. Now I'm going to multiply by the 9, but the 9's in the tens column, so we'll start with 0. 9 times 0 is 0. 9 times 2 is 18. Put 8 there, carry the 1. 9 times 1 is 9. Add 1, 10. Add up the figures in both rows, so I get 0, 2, 7 add 8 is 15. Put 5 there, carry the 1. Nothing add 0 is 0. Add 1 is 1. Nothing add 1 is 1. So 120 times 96 is 11520. But I was trying to work at 120 times 0.96. Now I had 2 figures after decimal point, so my answer needs 2 figures after decimal point. So it's 115.2 thousand. Now that was at the end of 2000 and after a year 2011. So what happens in 2011 to 2012? Well, it goes down again by 4%. So what I do is I multiply the 115.2 times 0.96. Now this is probably a lot harder than you'll get in the non-calculator paper, but we might as well go through with it. So I'll write 1152 times 96. 6 times 2 is 12, put 2 there, carry the 1. 6 times 5 is 30, add 1 is 31, put 1 there, carry the 3. 6 times 1 is 6, add 1, 9. 6 times 1 is 6. Now I'm going to multiply with the 9, but it's in the tens column, so I start with 0. 9 times 2 is 18. Put 8 there, carry the 1. 9 times 5 is 45, add 1, 46. Put 6 there, carry the 4. 9 times 1 is 9, add 4, 13. Put 3 there, carry the 1. 9 times 1 is 1. 9 times 1 is 1. 9 times 1 is 9, add 1, 10. Now I add them all up. 9 add 6 is 15. 6 add 3 is 9. Add 1, 10. Cool, there's a lot of carrying here, isn't there? Nothing add 0 is 0. Add 1 is 1. Nothing add 1 is 1. 1, 0, 5, 9, 2. That's what 1152 times 96 is. But let's look at my question. My question has 3 figures after decimal point, so my answer needs 3 figures. So the answer is 110.592 thou, which is the same as 110,592 pounds. Right, now the last one. Find the original quantity after percentage change. A shirt is reduced by 30% in a sale, is on sale £42. What did it cost before the reduction? Well, let's have a look. So there's the original 100%. We've taken away 30% to give us 70%. So 70% is equal to £42. Now, how are we going to find out what the original is, what the original 100% was? Well, let's work out what 10% is. 10% must be equal to 42 divided by 7. In other words, £6. So our 100% must be 10 times that, equal to £60. And if you want to double check, what is 100% take away 30% equals 70%. 70% as a decimal is 0.7. So what's 60 times 0.7? 60 times 7 is 420. My question had one figure after decimal point, so my answer needs one. So £60 times 0.7 is £42, and that was the information that was given. Look, I'm sorry that went on a bit longer than it ought to, and probably the second one about the repeated percentage change, I could have picked nicer numbers. But anyway, hopefully you've got the gist of all the sort of techniques you're going to use to solve percentage problems at GCSE.